The alarm screamed through the ship like a wounded animal. Commander Marcus Cole dropped his coffee and ran to the bridge. His boots made heavy sounds on the metal floor. Around him, his crew was already moving to their stations. "What do we have?" Marcus asked as he reached the main screen. Lieutenant Sarah Chun turned to face him. Her eyes were wide with concern. "Distress signal, Commander. Coming from the Vulcan Nebula. It's a Silvari vessel." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. The Silvari were a peaceful species. Humanity had only met them 2 years ago. They were tall, thin beings with skin that glowed with soft light. They never fought wars. They never carried weapons. They were artists, musicians, and dreamers. And now, one of their ships was dying in the cold darkness of space. "How far?" Marcus asked. 40 minutes at full speed. "Then, we move at full speed. Now." The human frigate Resolute turned its nose toward the nebula and pushed its engines to their limit. Marcus stood at the front of the bridge and watched the stars blur into lines of white light. His mind was racing. Distress signals in the Vulcan Nebula were never good news. The area was filled with asteroid fields and radiation storms. It was a dangerous place for any ship. When they arrived, Marcus understood why the Silvari had called for help. The passenger vessel was broken into 3 pieces. It floated in the darkness like a dead whale torn apart by sharks. Fire still burned in some sections, fed by leaking oxygen. Debris spread out for kilometers in every direction. Bodies floated among the wreckage. Silvari bodies. Their skin no longer glowed. They were dark and still. "Life signs?" Marcus asked. His voice was quiet. Chun checked her screen 3 times before answering. "1. Just 1, Commander. Very weak. Located in the forward section. 1 survivor. Out of what must have been hundreds of passengers, only 1 person was still alive." "I'm going in," Marcus said. His first officer, David Park, grabbed his arm. "Sir, the radiation levels in that section are extreme. Our suits can only protect us for 15 minutes. After that, then I'll have to be fast," Marcus said. He pulled his arm free and walked toward the airlock. The journey to the wreckage took 3 minutes. Marcus flew through space with a small jetpack on his back. The broken ship grew larger and larger until it filled his entire view. Up close, the damage was even worse. Metal was twisted and torn. Wires hung out like the guts of a dying creature. The smell of burning plastic filled his helmet. He entered through a crack in the hull. Inside, the ship was dark. Emergency lights flickered red every few seconds, showing him glimpses of destruction. Chairs were thrown against walls. Personal belongings were scattered everywhere. A child's toy floated past his face. Marcus pushed it aside and kept moving. His scanner led him deeper into the ship. The radiation counter on his wrist was climbing higher with each step. He had maybe 12 minutes left, maybe less. He found her in a collapsed compartment near the front of the ship. She was small, much smaller than the adult Silvari he had seen in pictures. A child, maybe 12 or 13 years old by human standards. Her skin should have been glowing with soft blue light, but instead was almost completely dark. Only a tiny flicker remained near her heart. She was dying. A heavy metal beam had fallen across the doorway, trapping her inside. She was pressed against the far wall, her large eyes staring at him with fear and confusion. She said something in her language. Marcus did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "Help me, please." "I'm going to get you out," Marcus said. He knew she could not understand him either, but he hoped his voice would comfort her. "Just hold on. I'm coming." He grabbed the metal beam and pulled. It did not move. He pulled harder. His muscles screamed in protest. The beam shifted slightly, but remained stuck. Marcus looked at his radiation counter. 9 minutes thought he could not wait for help. By the time his team arrived, the girl would be dead. By the time they cut through the beam with proper tools, her light would be gone forever. Marcus pulled out his emergency plasma cutter. It was a small tool designed for minor repairs. Using it on a beam this size would take too long and would require him to hold it at close range. The heat would be intense. The radiation was already cooking him from the inside. He did not care. He pressed the cutter against the beam and activated it. Orange fire erupted from the tip. Metal began to glow and melt. Heat washed over Marcus's hands and arms. His gloves began to smoke. He could feel his skin burning underneath, but he did not stop. The Sylvari girl watched him with wide eyes. She had never seen anything like this. Her people avoided pain. They avoided danger. They did not understand why any creature would hurt itself to save another. Yet here was this strange alien, burning his own flesh, refusing to give up. After 4 agonizing minutes, the beam broke apart. Marcus threw the pieces aside and rushed to the girl. She tried to move away from him at first. She was scared. He was a stranger, an alien, a monster from another world. But Marcus knelt down and held out his burned hands. His voice was gentle. "It's okay," he said softly. "I've got you. You're safe now." She looked into his eyes. She saw no anger there, no hunger, no cruelty. She saw only kindness, only warmth, only the desperate wish to help her survive. She reached out and took his hand. Marcus picked her up in his arms. She weighed almost nothing. Her body was cold against his chest. He could feel her weak heartbeat through his suit. It was slowing down. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Don't you dare give up." He ran through the ship. His legs burned. His arms burned. His lungs burned. The radiation counter had passed the danger level 5 minutes ago. He did not look at it anymore. When he burst out of the wreckage and into open space, his team was waiting for him. They grabbed him and the girl and pulled them toward the Resolute. Medical officers were standing by with equipment ready. Marcus collapsed on the floor of the airlock as soon as the doors closed. His vision was fading. His body was failing. But he kept his eyes on the girl as the doctors worked on her. "Will she live?" he asked. The doctor looked at him with serious eyes. "We'll do everything we can, Commander." Marcus nodded slowly. That was all he needed to hear. For the next 3 days, Marcus lay in the medical bay next to the Sylvari girl. His burns were treated. His radiation poisoning was managed. He was in terrible pain, but he refused to sleep unless someone promised to wake him if her condition changed. On the 3rd day, she opened her eyes. Her skin flickered with weak blue light. She turned her head and saw the human lying in the bed beside her. The human with bandaged hands and tired eyes. She did not know his name. She did not speak his language. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This creature had walked through fire for her, and she would never forget him. When the Sylvari recovery ship arrived later that day, they found Commander Marcus Cole standing at the girl's bedside, watching over her like a guardian spirit. Her name, they told him, was Lyris. She was the only survivor of the passenger vessel Starlight Dream. As they prepared to transfer her to their ship, Lyris reached out and touched Marcus's hand one last time. Her light glowed a little brighter. Then she was gone, and Marcus was left with nothing but scars and the memory of a child's grateful eyes. 5 years had passed since the rescue. The universe had continued to spin. Stars were born and stars died. Empires rose and fell. But some stories refused to fade away. Some stories only grew stronger with time. On the silvery homeworld of Volantis, in a beautiful city of crystal towers and floating gardens, a young woman stood before a crowd of children. Her name was Lyris. She was no longer the dying girl from the wreckage. She had grown tall and graceful, like all Sylvari. Her skin glowed with healthy blue light. Her eyes sparkled with life and intelligence. The children sat in a circle around her, their small faces filled with wonder. They had heard this story before. They had heard it many times, but they always wanted to hear it again. "Tell us about the human," one child said. "Tell us about the one who walked through fire." Lyra smiled softly. The memory still made her heart feel warm. "I was trapped," she began. "The ship was broken. My family was gone. I was alone in the darkness, and I could feel my light fading away. I thought I was going to die." The children leaned forward. Their lights flickered with fear and excitement. Then he came. The human. He was different from us. Shorter, heavier. His skin did not glow, but his eyes burned with something I had never seen before. A fire that was not fire. A determination that refused to give up. She held up her hands, making shapes in the air. A metal beam blocked the door. It was too heavy to move. Any of our people would have gone to find help. They would have been careful. They would have taken their time. But the human did not wait. What did he do? A small girl asked. He took out a tool that made fire. Real fire. Orange and hot and dangerous. And he pressed it against the metal. He melted it with his own hands. The heat was burning him. I could see smoke rising from his gloves. I could smell his flesh cooking. But he did not stop. He did not scream. He just kept cutting until the beam fell apart. The children gasped. The Sylvari were very sensitive to pain. Even a small cut would make them cry out. The idea of someone willingly burning themselves was almost impossible to understand. Why? Another child asked. Why would he hurt himself like that? Lyris thought about this question for a long moment. She had asked herself the same thing many times over the years. Because humans are different from us, she said finally. They carry something inside them that we do not have. A fire that makes them run toward danger instead of away from it. A voice that tells them to protect others, even if it means destroying themselves. They call it many things. Courage, duty, love. I do not know the right word, but I know it saved my life. After the children left, Lyris walked through the gardens alone. The flowers sang softly as she passed. The wind carried the sweet smell of nectar. It was peaceful here, safe, everything the Sylvari valued. But sometimes, late at night, Lyris still dreamed of darkness and fire. She still heard the sound of melting metal. She still felt the touch of burned hands lifting her to safety. She wondered where the human was now. Was he alive? Was he happy? Did he ever think about the alien girl he had saved so long ago? A gentle voice interrupted her thoughts. You are thinking about him again. Lyris turned to see High Matriarch Celira walking toward her. Celira was an older Sylvari, her light a soft silver color that spoke of wisdom and age. She had adopted Lyris 3 years ago, after the girl's recovery was complete. They had formed a deep bond, filling the empty spaces in each other's hearts. Celira had lost her own daughter in a different tragedy. Lyris had lost her entire family. Together, they had built something new. Something beautiful. I always think about him, Lyris admitted. Especially on this day. Celira nodded. She understood. Today was the anniversary of the rescue. I have news, Celira said. News that may interest you. Lyris looked at her mother with curious eyes. The council has made a decision, Celira continued. They want to form a full alliance with the humans. Not just trade agreements. Not just cultural exchanges. A true partnership. Military cooperation. Shared technology. Complete trust. Lyris felt her heart beat faster. That is wonderful news. There is more. Celira's silver light flickered with something that might have been amusement. I have been chosen to lead our delegation. We will travel to the neutral station called Concordance. There, we will meet with the human representatives and sign the treaty. I am proud of you, Mother, Lyris said, and I want you to come with me. Lyris blinked in surprise. Me? But I'm not a diplomat. I am just. You are the most famous Sylvari in the galaxy, Salira interrupted gently. The girl who was saved by a human. The living proof that our two species can trust each other. Your presence will mean more than 100 speeches. Lyris did not know what to say. The thought of traveling to meet humans filled her with excitement and fear. What if she saw him? What if she did not? What if he had forgotten her completely? There is one more thing, Salira said. Her voice became very soft. I have seen the list of human delegates. The names of everyone who will be there. Lyris's light began to pulse faster. She was afraid to hope. His name is on the list, my daughter. Commander Marcus Cole. He requested the assignment personally. For a long moment, Lyris could not breathe. The world around her seemed to freeze. The flowers stopped singing. The wind stopped blowing. There was only the sound of her own heart, beating loud and strong. He remembered. After 5 years, after hundreds of other missions, after all the pain and scars, he still remembered. And he wanted to see her again. Mother, Lyris whispered. Her light was blazing now, brighter than it had ever been. I have to go. I have to be there. Salira smiled and took her daughter's hands. I know, my child. I know. In the weeks that followed, Lyris prepared for the journey. She studied human customs and language. She practiced human greetings and gestures. She wanted to be perfect when she saw him again. She wanted to show him that his sacrifice had not been wasted, that she had grown into someone worthy of being saved. But no matter how much she prepared, she could not calm the storm inside her heart. What would she say to him? How could she possibly express what he meant to her? He had given her a second life. He had given her a future. Everything she was, everything she would become. All of it existed because a stranger had chosen to walk through fire. On the night before departure, Lyris stood on her balcony and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, a human ship was traveling toward the same destination. Somewhere out there, a man with scarred hands was thinking about her. I'm coming, she whispered to the darkness. Wait for me, please. The stars did not answer. But Lyris liked to imagine that somehow, across the vast emptiness of space, Marcus Cole could hear her dot, and perhaps, in his own way, he was whispering back. The space station Concordance floated in the darkness between worlds. It was a massive structure, built by many species working together. Rings of metal and glass surrounded a central tower. Lights blinked in hundreds of windows. Ships of all shapes and sizes docked at its many ports. For 300 years, Concordance had served as neutral ground. Wars had been ended here. Treaties had been signed. Enemies had become friends. It was a place of hope and possibility. Today, it would witness something historic. Lyris stood at the window of her quarters and watched the station grow larger as their ship approached. Her hands were trembling. Her light was flickering between blue and gold, showing her mixed emotions. She had not slept well for 3 nights. She had practiced her speech 100 times. She had changed her clothes 4 times this morning. Salira watched her daughter with knowing eyes. You are nervous. I am terrified, Lyris admitted. He's just a man, my child. A good man, yes. A brave man. But still just a man. Lyris shook her head. He is not just a man to me, Mother. He is the reason I exist. Every breath I take, every dream I have, every moment of happiness I feel, all of it belongs to him. How do I face someone like that? What do I say? Salira walked over and put her hands on her daughter's shoulders. You say thank you, and then you show him who you have become. That is all any savior could want, to see that their sacrifice mattered. The docking process took an hour. Then there were security checks and customs procedures. Lyris barely noticed any of it. She moved through the motions automatically, her mind focused on only one thing. He was here. Somewhere on this station, Marcus Cole was breathing the same recycled air, walking the same metal corridors. Maybe he was nervous too. Maybe he was wondering what she looked like now. Maybe he was afraid she had forgotten him. She almost laughed at that thought. Forget him? She had spent 5 years thinking about him every single day. The grand chamber where the summit would be held was located in the center of the station. It was a huge circular room with a domed ceiling made of transparent glass. Stars filled the view above, making everyone feel small and humble. The Sylvari delegation entered from the east. There were 20 of them, all dressed in flowing robes of silver and blue. Celira walked at the front, her silver light commanding respect. Lyris walked beside her, trying to keep her composure. The chamber was already half full. Representatives from a dozen species had come to witness this historic moment. They were tall, thin creatures with too many eyes. Short, wide beings covered in scales. Things that floated and things that crawled. The galaxy was vast and strange and wonderful. But Lyris only cared about one species. Only looked for one face. The human delegation had not arrived yet. Celira guided her to their designated seats. Lyris sat down and tried to slow her breathing. Her light was pulsing too fast. Other delegates were starting to notice. A young Sylvari acting so emotional was unusual and slightly embarrassing. Control yourself, Celira whispered kindly. You are representing our people. I know. I am trying. Minutes passed. They felt like hours. Lyris watched the entrance doors with such intensity that her eyes began to hurt. Then the doors opened. The humans walked in. There were 15 of them. They wore dark uniforms with silver buttons. Their faces were serious and professional. They moved with confidence and purpose. Compared to the other species in the room, they looked almost plain. No glowing skin, no extra limbs, no special features, but there was something about them. Something in the way they carried themselves. A quiet strength, a hidden fire. Even the way they walked seemed different, heavier, more solid, as if they were saying to the universe, we are here. We will not be moved. Lyris scanned their faces desperately. She saw men and women of different ages and colors. She saw soldiers and diplomats and scientists. But she did not see him. Her heart began to sink. What if he had changed his mind? What if he had been assigned somewhere else? What if she had traveled all this way for nothing? Then the last human entered the room. He was older than she remembered. His dark hair had threads of silver now. His face had new lines around the eyes and mouth. He walked with a slight stiffness, as if old injuries still bothered him, but his eyes were the same. Deep and warm and kind. The eyes that had looked at a dying alien child and refused to give up. And his hands. She could see his hands even from across the room. Scarred and rough. Burned and healed and burned again. The hands that had melted metal. The hands that had carried her to safety. Lyris felt something break inside her. 5 years of waiting. 5 years of wondering. 5 years of hoping and dreaming and praying. All of it came rushing out at once. Her light exploded. Golden fire erupted from her skin, brighter than any Sylvari had ever glowed before. It filled the space around her like a small sun. Delegates from other species stepped back in alarm. Her own people stared at her in shock, but Lyris did not notice any of them. She only saw him and then, across the crowded room, Marcus Cole's eyes found hers. He smiled. It was a small smile, tired and humble. The smile of a man who did not think he deserved any special attention. But it was also warm and real and full of recognition. He remembered her. Lyris could not control herself. She turned to Celira with tears running down her glowing face. Her voice came out as a broken whisper, filled with emotions she could not name. "Mom, it's him." Celira looked at her daughter, then at the scarred human across the room. Understanding dawned in her silver eyes. "I know, my child," she said softly. "I know." The formal proceedings were supposed to begin immediately. There were schedules to follow, protocols to observe, speeches to give. But everyone in the room could feel that something important was happening. Something bigger than politics and treaties. Celira stood up slowly. She was the highest-ranking Sylvari present. Her word was law. "I request a brief pause before we begin," she announced. Her voice carried across the silent chamber. "There is a personal matter that must be addressed first." The human delegation leader, a gray-haired woman named Admiral Chun, looked confused. But she nodded her agreement. "Of course, matriarch. Take whatever time you need." Celira turned to Lyris. "Go to him." Lyris stood on shaking legs. Her golden light had dimmed slightly, but it still burned brighter than normal. Every eye in the room was watching her. She did not care. She walked toward the human delegation. The crowd parted before her like water around a stone. Step by step, she crossed the distance that had separated them for 5 long years. Marcus Cole stepped forward to meet her. They stopped an arm's length apart. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. The air between them was filled with memories. Fire and darkness. Pain and hope. A child's desperate eyes. A stranger's gentle hands. "Hello, Lyris," Marcus said finally. His voice was rough with emotion. "You grew up." "Hello, Commander Cole." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You came. I had to." He looked at his scarred hands, then back at her face. "I had to see for myself that you were okay." Lyris laughed. It was a wet, broken sound. "Okay? Because of you, I am more than okay. I am alive. I am happy. I have a mother who loves me. I have a future. All because you refused to let me go." Marcus shook his head. Anyone would have done the same. "No." Lyris stepped closer. Her light wrapped around them, both like a warm embrace. "No, they would not have. I have learned much about the galaxy in 5 years, Commander. I have met many species. I have studied many cultures, and I have never found another like yours. No one else would walk through fire for a stranger. No one else would burn their own flesh to save an alien child. Only humans. Only you." Marcus did not know what to say. He was not good with words. He was a soldier, a rescuer, a man who acted instead of talked. So instead of speaking, he simply held out his hand. Lyris took it without hesitation. His scarred palm was warm against her glowing fingers. It felt like coming home. Around them, the delegates watched in silence. Some were confused. Some were moved. Some were beginning to understand what this alliance truly meant. It was not just about politics. It was not just about trade or military power. It was about trust. It was about hope. It was about the possibility that 2 very different species could find something real and true and lasting between them. It was about fire and the strange, wonderful creatures who were not afraid to walk through it. The grand chamber remained silent as Lyris held Marcus's hand. Time itself seemed to pause. The stars above continued their ancient dance, but below them, 2 souls were reconnecting after years of separation. Marcus looked at the young woman before him. He remembered her as a small, fragile thing, a fading light in a broken ship. Now she stood tall and proud. Her skin glowed with health and life. Her eyes sparkled with intelligence and warmth. She was beautiful in a way that humans could not fully describe. "I thought about you," he said quietly. "Every day." Lyris's light flickered with surprise. "You did? How could I not?" Marcus lifted their joined hands slightly. "These scars never let me forget. Every time I looked at them, I wondered about you. I wondered if you were happy, if you had found a new family, if you remembered the strange human who pulled you out of the dark." "I never stopped remembering," Lyris said. Her voice cracked with emotion. "You were my first thought every morning, my last prayer every night. I told your story to everyone who would listen. You became a legend among my people." Marcus laughed softly. It was an uncomfortable sound. "I'm no legend. I'm just a soldier who did his job." "No," Lyris shook her head firmly. "What you did was not your job. Your job was to answer distress calls. Your job was to search for survivors. Your job ended when you reached the ship and found one life sign." She stepped closer to him. Her golden light surrounded them both like a warm cocoon. "You could have sent others to get me. You could have waited for proper equipment. You could have protected yourself from the radiation and the heat. But you chose to come alone. You chose to use your own hands. You chose to burn." Marcus looked away. He was not comfortable with praise. He never had been. "There was no time," he said simply. "If I had waited, you would have died." "Exactly." Lyris reached up and touched his face gently. Her fingers were warm against his skin. "You did not think about yourself. You did not calculate the risks. You saw a child in danger, and you moved. That is not duty, Commander. That is love." The word hung in the air between them. Love. Such a simple word. Such a complex meaning. Before Marcus could respond, a new voice entered their conversation. "So this is the human who saved my daughter." They turned to see Celira approaching. The High Matriarch moved with grace and dignity. Her silver light was calm and steady, a perfect contrast to Lyris's blazing gold. Marcus released Lyris's hand and stood straight. He recognized authority when he saw it. "Matriarch Celira," he said, bowing his head slightly. "It is an honor to meet you." Celira studied him for a long moment. Her large eyes took in every detail. The scars on his hands and neck, the gray in his hair, the lines on his face, the quiet strength in his stance. "You are smaller than I expected," she said finally. Marcus blinked in surprise. Then he laughed. A real laugh, warm and genuine. "I get that a lot from other species." Celira smiled. It was a rare expression for her. "I have heard your story many times. My daughter tells it to anyone who will listen. She has made you into something almost mythical. A giant who walks through fire. A warrior who fears nothing. A savior who asks nothing in return." She stepped closer to him. "But now I see the truth. You are not a giant. You are not a myth. You are simply a man. A man with scars and gray hair and tired eyes." Marcus nodded. He could not argue with any of that. "And yet," Celira continued, "that makes what you did even more amazing. You had no special powers, no supernatural strength, no immunity to pain. You were just a man, and you chose to suffer for a child you had never met." She reached out and took his scarred hands in both of hers. Her touch was gentle, almost reverent. "You gave me a daughter, Commander Cole. When I lost my own child, I thought my heart would never heal. But then Lyris came into my life. She was wounded and lost and afraid, just like me. We healed each other. We built a new family from the broken pieces of our old ones." Tears were flowing down Celira's face now. Her silver light pulsed with emotion. "None of that would exist without you. Lyris would be dead. I would still be alone. The hope that I feel every day, the love that fills my home, the future that stretches before us, all of it began with your choice. Your sacrifice. Your fire. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. He was not good at receiving gratitude. He had always believed that doing the right thing should be its own reward. I was just doing what any human would do, he said. Celira shook her head slowly. You keep saying that, but I have studied your species, Commander. I know that not all humans are like you. Some are cruel. Some are selfish. Some would have turned away from a dying alien child without a second thought. She released his hands and stepped back. But enough of them are like you. Enough of them carry that fire inside them. And that is why we are here today. That is why my people want this alliance. Not because of your technology or your military strength. Because of your hearts. Because when the darkness comes, humans run toward it instead of away. The silence in the chamber was complete. Every delegate was listening. Every species was watching. Admiral Chun, the leader of the human delegation, stepped forward. Her eyes were wet, though she tried to hide it. Matriarch Celira, she said formally, on behalf of Earth and all human colonies, I thank you for your words. But I must be honest with you. Commander Cole is exceptional, even among us. What he did that day went beyond normal duty. We consider him a hero. Celira turned to look at the Admiral. Then why does he seem so uncomfortable with that title? Chun smiled sadly. Because true heroes never think of themselves that way. They just see a problem and try to fix it. They don't stop to count the cost. Lyris had been silent during this exchange. But now she spoke up, her voice strong and clear. May I say something? Everyone turned to look at her. I was 12 years old when the Starlight Dream was destroyed. I lost my parents, my siblings, everyone I had ever loved. I was alone in the darkness, waiting to die. And then Commander Cole appeared. She walked to stand between Marcus and the assembled delegates. He did not speak my language. He did not know my name. He had no reason to care about me. I was just one small life among billions. A stranger from a strange world. But he looked at me with such determination, such fierce, stubborn hope. And he said words I could not understand, but I felt their meaning in my heart. She turned to face Marcus. You said, I've got you. You're safe now. I learned those words later. I memorized them in your language. I say them to myself whenever I am afraid. They remind me that there is goodness in the universe, that there are beings who will fight for others, that there is always hope, even in the darkest moments. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. He had not cried in many years. Soldiers were not supposed to cry. But looking at this young woman, seeing what she had become, hearing her words, he could not stop himself. Lyris, he said softly. He could not find the words. So he did something he had never done before. Something that broke every protocol he had ever learned. He opened his arms. Lyris did not hesitate. She rushed forward and embraced him. Her arms wrapped around his chest. Her head pressed against his shoulder. Her light enveloped them both in warm golden fire. Marcus held her close. He felt her heartbeat against his chest. Strong and steady, alive, because of him. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for growing up. Thank you for becoming this amazing person. Thank you for giving meaning to my scars. Lyris laughed through her tears. Thank you for giving me the chance. They held each other for a long moment. Human and Silvari. Rescuer and rescued. Two strangers who had become something more. Around them, the chamber began to stir. Delegates were wiping their eyes. Murmurs of approval spread through the crowd. Even the most cynical observers could not deny the power of what they were witnessing. Admiral Chun turned to Celira. I think we have found our foundation, matriarch. Not in treaties or technology, but in this. In the connection between two people who should have been strangers, but chose to be family. Celira nodded, her silver light glowing with warmth. Then let us build upon it, Admiral. Let us create something that will last for generations. An alliance built not on fear or necessity, but on trust, on hope, on fire. The formal proceedings resumed shortly after, but everyone knew that the real work had already been done. The alliance would be signed. The treaty would be ratified. History would remember this day. And at the center of it all, a scarred human commander and a glowing alien woman sat side by side, their hands quietly touching beneath the table, connected by a bond that no distance could break. The negotiations lasted 3 days. Both sides talked about trade agreements and border patrols. They discussed technology sharing and cultural exchanges. They argued about small details and compromised on large ones. It was the kind of work that made history books boring, that made the universe a safer place. Through it all, Marcus Cole sat quietly at the back of the human delegation. He was not a diplomat. He did not understand the complex language of treaties and protocols. But Admiral Chun had insisted that he stay. "You're the reason we're here," she had told him. "The Savari trust us because of what you did. Your presence matters more than you know." So Marcus stayed. He watched. He listened. And whenever the talks became difficult, whenever tensions started to rise, he noticed something interesting. The Silvari delegates would look at him. They would see his scarred hands resting on the table. They would remember the story of the human who walked through fire. And their lights would soften. Their voices would calm. The anger would fade from their eyes. He was not just a hero to Lyris. He had become a symbol to her entire people. Living proof that humans could be trusted. That they were worthy of alliance. On the final day, the Concordance Pact was ready for signing. The Grand Chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from dozens of species had come to witness this historic moment. Cameras from 100 worlds broadcast the event across the galaxy. High, Matriarch Celira stood before the assembled crowd. Her silver light filled the space around her like a gentle moon. She held a small device in her hands, the Silvari equivalent of a signing pen. "Before I add my name to this treaty," she announced, "I wish to speak. Not as a diplomat, not as a politician, but as a mother." The chamber fell silent. 5 years ago, my daughter was dying alone in the wreckage of a destroyed ship. She was 12 years old. She had lost everyone she loved. Her light was fading. Hope was gone. Celira's voice trembled slightly, but she continued. Then a human came. Commander Marcus Cole of the Earth vessel Resolute. He heard her distress signal. He flew to the wreckage. He found her trapped behind a metal beam. She turned to look at Marcus, who sat uncomfortably in the crowd. The radiation levels were lethal. The heat from his cutting tool was burning his hands. Protocol demanded that he wait for support. Common sense demanded that he protect himself. Every instinct for survival demanded that he retreat. She paused, but he did not retreat. He did not wait. He did not think about himself at all. He only thought about the small alien girl who was counting on him. And so he burned. He suffered. He pushed his body past its limits. And he carried my daughter to safety in his arms. Tears were flowing down Celira's face now. She did not try to hide them. We Silvari have lived for 10,000 years, believing that the universe is dangerous. We have taught our children to avoid risk. We have built our civilization on caution and careful planning. We survive by staying away from fire. She held up her hands to the crowd. But humans are different. They do not run from fire. They run toward it. They do not ask if the danger is worth the reward. They simply act. They burn for strangers. They sacrifice for children they have never met. They carry the wounded on their backs and refuse to let go, no matter how much it hurts. Her silver light blazed brighter than anyone had ever seen. Commander Cole taught my daughter that she matters. Not because of treaties or politics or mutual benefit, but because that is who humans are. They cannot help themselves. When they see someone in need, something inside them ignites. A fire that demands action. A flame that refuses to die. She turned to face the human delegation directly. And so, when I sign this pact, I want the universe to understand something. We are not simply allying with a government. We are not just making a deal with a species. We are binding ourselves to a people. A people who carry fire in their hearts. A people who will stand beside us when the darkness comes. She lifted the signing device. To the humans, you have earned our trust. Not through power or wealth or technology. Through compassion. Through sacrifice. Through the simple, stubborn refusal to let a child die alone in the dark. She pressed the device to the treaty. May this alliance last for 10,000 years. May our children and their children look back on this day and remember. Remember the human who walked through fire. Remember the fire that burns in all of them. Remember that in a cold and dangerous universe, there are still those who will reach out their hand and say, "I've got you. You're safe now." The chamber erupted in applause. Delegates rose to their feet. Lights of every color flashed and swirled. It was the most emotional moment in the history of the Concordance. Station Admiral Chun stepped forward and signed the treaty on behalf of humanity. Her hand was steady, but her eyes were wet. "On behalf of Earth and all human colonies," she said, "we accept this alliance with grateful hearts. We promise to honor the trust you have placed in us. We promise to run toward the fire, wherever it burns. We promise to be worthy of the faith you have shown us today." The formal ceremony ended with music and celebration. Delegates from both species mingled and talked and laughed together. New friendships were formed. Old suspicions were forgotten. The future stretched before them like an endless field of stars. But Marcus Cole did not stay for the celebration. He slipped away quietly and found his way to an observation deck on the far side of the station. It was a small room with a curved window that looked out at the universe. Stars filled the view like scattered diamonds. Nebulae painted the darkness with colors that had no names. Marcus sat down on a bench and stared at the endless night. His hands ached. They always ached when he was tired or emotional. The scars never let him forget. He did not know how long he sat there before he heard footsteps behind him. "I thought I might find you here." Marcus turned to see Lyris standing in the doorway. Her golden light was soft now, warm and gentle like a candle flame. "I'm not much for parties," he said. Lyris smiled and walked over to sit beside him. "Neither am I. Too many people. Too much noise. I prefer quiet places like this." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while. Outside the window, a comet streaked across the stars, leaving a trail of ice and light behind it. "My mother's speech was beautiful," Lyris said finally. "It was too much," Marcus replied. "I'm just a soldier. I did what anyone would do." "You keep saying that." Lyris turned to look at him. "Do you really believe it?" Marcus thought about the question. He thought about all the other rescues he had performed over the years. All the lives he had saved. All the dangers he had faced. He had never asked for praise. He had never expected gratitude. He just did his job and moved on to the next mission. But Lyris was different. Seeing her grown up, hearing her words, watching her light blaze with joy and love, it had changed something inside him. "I used to believe it," he said slowly. "I used to think that what I did was ordinary, that any person would do the same in my place. But after meeting you, after seeing what you've become, after hearing what your people think of me." He shook his head. "I don't know anymore." Lyris reached out and took his scarred hand in hers. "Let me tell you what I believe," she said softly. "I believe that you are special. Not because you are stronger or smarter or braver than other humans, but because when the moment came, you did not hesitate. You did not calculate. You did not weigh your own life against mine and decide I was not worth the risk." She squeezed his hand gently. "You just acted. You just burned. You just held on and refused to let go. And that, Commander Cole, is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes again. He let them fall this time. He was tired of being strong. "Do you regret it?" Lyris asked. "The scars. The pain. The years of suffering." Marcus looked at his hands. Rough and twisted. Forever marked by fire. Then he looked at Lyris, tall and beautiful. Alive and glowing with light. He smiled. "Lyris, these scars are the best thing I ever earned." She laughed softly and leaned her head against his shoulder. Her light wrapped around them both, warm and golden, pushing back the darkness of space. "Then let them be a reminder," she said. "Not of pain, but of hope. Of the moment when two strangers from different worlds found each other in the darkness. Of the fire that connects us all." Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. Outside the window, the stars continued their ancient dance. Empires would rise and fall. Species would come and go. The universe would keep spinning in its endless circle. But here, in this quiet room, a human and a Sylvari sat together in peace, bound by fire, united by love, looking toward a future that neither of them had dared to imagine. The alliance would last for 10,000 years, just as Salira had hoped. Humans and Sylvari would stand together through wars and plagues and disasters of every kind. They would save each other. They would sacrifice for each other. They would carry the fire forward into generations yet unborn. And when children asked how it all began, their parents would tell them the story. The story of a broken ship and a dying girl. The story of a man who walked through fire. The story of scars that became symbols. The story of strangers who became family. The story of the human who refused to let go. And in the quiet corners of the galaxy, wherever darkness threatened to swallow hope, people would remember. They would remember that somewhere out there, humans were watching. Humans were waiting.